Senator, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just clear this up at the start. Are you going to join with Peter Dutton in voting no?
Definitely not.
Definitely not.
Definitely
so anyone
not.
who suggests you're in the no camp
I'm not
is wrong.
in the no camp. I've never been in the no camp, and my position has been clear all along, and that is that we need a treaty in this country.
So what's your position then on the question that's before, or was going to be before all Australians on the Voice itself? You're not voting no. Will you vote yes?
Well, the yes vote is to allow for a powerless voice to go into the Constitution. Yes, we don't know what this looks like. It could be one person. It's up to the Parliament to decide what the voice looks like. So I can't support something that gives us no power, and I certainly cannot support a no campaign that is looking more like a white supremacy campaign that is causing a lot of harm. So I'm considering to abstain from the up-and-coming vote, given our people want a treaty. We want the recommendations implemented for the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. We have incarceration rates going out of control, and we have over 22,000 Aboriginal children in out-of-home care today. That is the priority that this country should be talking about, and the government have an opportunity to show good faith and implement those recommendations. They might get my vote if they do that.
I'll come back to that. Just to clear up, though, when you talk about abstaining on the vote, there are two votes, I suppose, for you. There's the one in the Senate next month on the legislation, the Constitution Alteration Bill, to have the referendum. Then there's the vote that you and every Australian will have in the referendum. Let's just be clear about it. Are you saying you'll abstain on the vote in the Senate?
I am considering abstaining on the vote in the Senate. I do have an amendment that I will be proposing, which is about acknowledging the sovereign status of First Nations peoples in this country. And I'm still in negotiation with the government on implementing national recommendations that will save people's lives today. It's been difficult to get meetings with the Minister herself and the Attorney-General. And
Didn't you meet with her last week?
I did, but that was after 5 months of waiting. And the door has not been open for myself or the Black Sovereign movement in this country. And I think that's part of the problem.
OK, but if you're going to abstain on the vote next month in the Senate, do you think people might think, well, hang on, your main reason for being in Parliament is to advance the rights and well-being of Indigenous Australians? It's a pretty big issue. Are you sitting on the fence? Why can't you make a decision to vote yes or no?
Because neither of them are going to change anything in this country. They're not going to change the reality of what is going on in this country right now. We had a suicide of a young man this week. The incarceration rates, as I say, are happening every day in this country.
And are you saying a voice would not help at all?
Well, the voice is going to be decided by parliamentarians on who it is, what it looks like, what it does. That is no power to the people. We need to start discussing sovereignty in this country that will ultimately bring power to First Nations people, which is what my amendment talks about. But
isn't the idea of the voice, yes, Parliament would decide its structure, but it would be Indigenous Australians who decide who is on the voice?
That's not specified in any of the detail. And if we look at what, say, Megan Davis said at the National Press Club, is that they banned legitimate senior Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders who were questioning the whole constitutional recognition reform. They've excluded those voices for 6 years, David. So I can't support something that has not had the free, prior and informed consent and full, genuine consultation of the people, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, who this will ultimately affect. And I won't be sitting with racists and white supremacy on the no. So as I said, I've been clear. My position is treaty, and I will continue to negotiate with the government to implement recommendations. If they do that, show us some good faith. Just show us some good faith. They've been in power before. They could have implemented the recommendations back then. And we know that Hawke and Keating wanted treaty. So why is this government following on from the coalition government's policy?
Their argument on that is that you need a voice first. Who is the government going to take advice from if there's no voice on things like treaty and truth-telling?
They have voices. They just haven't been listening. This government is
Who should they talk to about treaty?
Well, they should talk to the many clans and nations that are going through processes now, but also having an understanding of what that looks like. It should look like peace in communities. It should be open to all Australians in this country to have a conversation in their local communities about what coming together looks like, what peace looks like.
But treaties around the world take years and years and years to negotiate. And as you say, there are many clans who would be involved. There are many groups who would want to be involved here. Wouldn't a voice help to coordinate, to advise the government at least on the best approach?
Well, we don't know. As I said, the government could pick Noel Pearson as the voice and the one and only voice.
Let's be real.
There are concerns about
there's not
what
going
the
to be
voice...
a one-person voice. No one has suggested
Well,
that.
It seems that this whole campaign has come from a Pearson, quite conservative idea from many, many years ago. They've been pushing this for a number of years as a conservative idea.
But it is disingenuous to say that it would be a one-person voice.
Well, is it? You know, we don't have any idea of what or how they're going to select or go through a process to decide which Aboriginal people or Torres Strait Islander people they're going to pick for this job, just like they've handpicked all of their referendum advisors, and that's part of the process that's gone wrong. They've excluded too many grassroots sovereign blackfellas around the country, and they're the people who are the progressive no's, and they're the people who've got concerns about cessation of sovereignty.
When you talk about sovereignty, I'm just interested in you sort of explaining what you're talking about there, because it's a word that can mean different things to different people. The amendment that you've flagged that you're going to be moving on the legislation in the Senate, it does talk about the right of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to exercise an unimpeded and collective self-determinant governance over their political, economic and social affairs. What would that sort of sovereignty look like in practice?
That would look like negotiating with the Crown on things like resources, things like land, things like possibly reparations and land rights, land back. We've had so much taken from us over the last 200 years. That's why we have the rates that we're dealing with today. That's why we have a stolen generation, deaths in custody, incarceration rates, is because our cries have fallen on deaf ears through successive governments. A voice may give advice to the Parliament. Well, may is not good enough as far as we're concerned. And we want real power. We want to be acknowledged as sovereigns in this country, just as the Crown is acknowledged as a sovereign.
The Attorney-General, on behalf of the government, has said there's nothing in the proposed voice amendment to the Constitution that would impede sovereignty, that would undermine sovereignty. The expert working group of constitutional experts have said the same. What is it in this proposal that you think would have anything to do with undermining sovereignty?
Well, the very fact that, the Australian Constitution hasn't been here for very long, compared to First Nations peoples. We've been here for thousands and thousands of generations. So our Constitution is the oldest Constitution on the planet, and that comes with caring for country, caring for one another, caring for our totems. Those responsibilities we take very seriously, and we have a law of the land. So to then have a constitution rock on 200 years ago or since 1901 to say, well, this is a new law of the land, we need to be acknowledged as sovereign people, as part of the so-called founding document.
But my question was, what does putting an Indigenous voice in the Constitution do that's going to undermine that cause?
Without acknowledging our sovereignty, which I know the AG has said it doesn't undermine, or the experts in that field, but they're basing it on a colonial system. They're basing it on their training as lawyers within the legal colonial system.
So do you have a different legal view on this?
Our view is from the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and our rights to self-determine our own political structures, our own economic base, and have real power for us to self-determine our own destiny to go forward.
I understand your point on that, but again, does putting the voice in the Constitution make that harder?
It may. It depends who they choose as the voice, and remembering that they have no power. They can come up with a good idea, and the likes of Pauline Hanson will say, don't like that idea, and it doesn't go anywhere. So it's not going to be taken seriously. And we need real power. We need a treaty. We need truth-telling so that we can eradicate the racism that we're dealing with in this country. People don't understand the true history of this nation. You only need to look at Sky After Dark. They have no idea. So that's the stuff we need to eradicate for us to come together for the good of this nation and to mature as a nation. And the only mechanism to do that is a treaty.
Just before we leave this whole issue, do you think by not supporting yes, you are helping the no campaign?
Not at all. I've been very clear that I will continue to fight for justice, continue to fight for treaty, and I think the yes and no campaign are very different, obviously, and I don't subscribe to either side.
So you're thinking about, it sounds like you will abstain on the Senate vote, and then in the referendum later in the year, what will you do?
Depends what Labor comes good with. You know, they're waving our black flag, implement the Royal Commission into deaths in custody. You have the time to do that before the referendum. You have time to implement the Bringing Them Home report, which we looked at yesterday on Sorry Day, while they're celebrating at Uluru. I mean, if that's any indication of what Labor think about stolen generations and child removal, then we have a long way to go.
Just before I let you go, you also during the week had a go at your former Greens colleague, Sarah Hanson-Young. You suggested that she failed to stand up against racism in the party that was directed towards you. Sarah Hanson-Young has rejected that accusation. What were you talking about there?
Well, unfortunately, David, I can't comment on that because I have been advised by my lawyers that it does need to be sent to the Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Commission. There is enough grounds for a case and I'll have to leave it there.
So you are lodging a case about this?
I am.
In relation to your former party colleagues?
I'll leave that up to my lawyers and the Human Rights Commission to... That's a conversation I need to have with them. I don't want to say any further, but yes, I've experienced racism all my life in every workplace, and the Greens were no different.
All right. And what are you seeking through this sort of case?
I just want racism stamped out. We see, you know, the ABC. It's called institutional racism. It's the foundation of these institutions that are racist, that allow racism to occur. I think we all need to look at ourselves within and eradicate that and make our workplaces safer.
Senator Lidia Thorpe, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.